My first experience with podcasting happened all the way back in 2019. I was living in LA. I was performing and I was teaching voice lessons and being an audition coach. Little did I know that cut to now, and I would be hosting or at least co hosting two different podcasts. I never would have known. But it was such a cool experience being a guest on someone else's podcast. And after that episode was released, something kind of weird happened. It was a little surreal. I started being quoted. Now, not by like everybody, but the host of the podcast in particular, as part of his marketing, was taking quotes, things that I had said during our interview, during the episode recording, and quoting me. And it was really interesting for me to hear back some of the things that I had said and that he considered wisdoms, right? Because we often, or I especially often look to other people and hear some of their quotes and things that they say and think, oh, wow, that's a great little like tidbit. But I don't think I would ever look at something that I say and think of it from that perspective. But when I was looking for a quote for this week, one of my old quotes from back then came back to my attention, and I realized that this is a topic that we haven't really touched on yet here, but it's so relevant to the conversation we've been having. So this week, I'm going to be quoting myself. The quote is, "Your schedule will not lie to you. It's going to tell you what matters." But before we dive into this quote, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. So it's coming up on the end of the year, which means that the new year is fast approaching, way too fast approaching. And with the new year tends to come resolutions. For most of my life, my adult life, I was like most people, like probably like you, making well-intentioned resolutions that were lucky to see Valentine's Day. In fact, they were probably lucky to see the following week, if I'm really honest. But lately here on the channel, you've probably heard me talking more about habits that I have been building and actually sticking with. So, what changed? Well, a lot, actually. But in this episode, I'm going to talk about three specific things that really changed that have made all the difference for me. And we'll also talk about how that relates back to this week's quote. So, the three things are number one, I don't wait for January 1st. Number two, I keep it simple. And number three, I track everything. Let's start with number one, but make sure that you stick around to the end because I have a little Christmas gift just for you. Just like you, I love thinking of the new year as a fresh start, an opportunity to reflect on what went well in the past year, what maybe didn't go so well, and also on what I want to achieve in the coming year. I still love that and I still do that. I think what shifted in me though, and I am going to credit particularly James Clear for this. There have definitely been others who have contributed to this, but James was really the first one that like got through to me, if that makes sense. But he really helped me to realize that, yes, it's great to have kind of like an overall reset of intentions every year, and all of that is great. But the reality is that we can do the same thing every single morning. Every morning when we wake up, it's absolutely a fresh start. Things might have not gone well yesterday. I might have skipped my exercises. I might have not gotten some things done that I fully intended to do. But does that mean that I have to wait for some arbitrary date, even the beginning of a week, to reset my intentions and start fresh? No, absolutely not. The morning is the perfect opportunity, and we have 365 of them every year. Well, unless it's a leap year, and then there's more. But point being, every single day we have this opportunity to start fresh. And while I always knew that, it wasn't until I actually embraced that idea that things started to really shift for me. I recognized that I can build more habits throughout the course of a year if I look at each morning, each day as a new opportunity to stick with what I started yesterday and, depending on the situation, to start something new. So truly embracing that idea is the first thing that started to make a shift for me in this way. The second thing I mentioned was keeping it simple. And okay, so Here's where my natural overcomplication, overthinking tendencies were really working against me for a very long time. And maybe you feel the same way. I had grand dreams. I'm a very naturally ambitious person, but being ambitious without a plan is not going to get you anywhere. In fact, it's just going to lead you to frustration and feeling like you can't, like you aren't able to do something. Because what I finally realized, and this was not just James, but he was the start of it, is that setting the goal is just the beginning. You can't just set a big, broad goal and then work towards it. It doesn't exactly work like that. I mean, you can try, but it's going to be really challenging because you don't have an actionable strategy. So while I still come up with those, what I like to call big G goals every year, and actually we just did this in the Academy. We did a live event and now it's a course in the Academy called Design Your Dream Year. And it is the first part of this process. It's figuring out what are those big G goals that you're going to work towards. But then in January, we're going to take those goals and then do the second part of what I've learned here, which is to break them down into simple steps. It's what we call reverse engineering, right? We take the result that we want and then we break it down and look backwards and break it into bite-sized habits that we can start working on and build and build and build until we eventually reach that ultimate goal. If you want to join us in designing your dream year, I will make sure to drop a link for the Academy in the comments. You can scan the QR code and join us. You can design your dream year on your own now, and then you can join us for building habits in January. So by remembering to keep it simple, I am breaking these things down into bite-sized, actually accomplishable pieces. And that is the first step towards me allowing myself to feel progress and to feel like I'm getting somewhere. Whereas if I have this big G goal that's way out there, and it's going to take me a long time to feel like I'm actually making progress, like I'm actually moving towards that goal, I'm going to lose my motivation. And I think that was one of the biggest revelations for me in the past couple of years that has made a huge, huge difference. And then the third thing that I mentioned was that I track everything. And here's where my gift to you comes in. So I am going to gift you my Trello habit tracker. This was absolutely born from James Clear. He talks about having like a written habit tracker in his book Atomic Habits. And actually, I think he had a link to where he gave you like a template for it. But it was very manual. And I know me, and I'm the kind of person that I need the tracking to be a little bit more automated and easier for me to kind of reflect back on. So what I actually did was create an automated habit tracker in, of course, Trello. I've done a video on this before, so I'll make sure to put the card up above so you can go and check that out as well. But I will also put a link to the habit tracker itself right there in the description so that you can get it and start building out your habit tracker, getting it ready for next year. But let's bring this back to our original quote of your schedule will not lie to you. It's going to tell you what matters. There's two sides to this. On the one hand, when you actually incorporate these habits, these things that you want to do that are going to help you move towards your goals, your resolutions, whatever you want to call them, when you actually write them down somewhere and incorporate them into your schedule, you are so much more likely to actually stick with them because you've made space for them. In addition to that, if you're using Trello and my Trello habit tracker, you can also set up these automated reminders so that it makes it easier for you, even when you're busy and it's a really hectic day and you haven't quite built up that habit yet. It will pop up at you and remind you like, hey, don't forget to read or do sit-ups or whatever it is that you're trying to build into your schedule and into your day. So it's really, really helped me to stay motivated and on track with those things, even when things are crazy. But it also gives me the ability to look back on and see the progress that I have made to help me stay motivated, even on the days that I just don't feel like it, because those days still come. And then the second side of how this quote and the idea of tracking everything kind of plays together, this is back to the point that I was making all those years ago when I first said this. When we are working toward a particular goal, or let's just say we think that we're working towards a particular goal, and we don't feel like we're making progress. I mean, not progress that feels meaningful to us. This is the moment where we need to stop and actually look at our calendar, look at our schedule. Where have we spent our time? Because if we have not given the steps that are needed to reach that goal, if we have not given them intentional space in our schedule, in our calendar, then we're kind of saying one of two things. We're either saying that that goal that we set doesn't actually matter to us as much as we say it does or even think it does. That's one option. Or we can then realize that we need to make space. We need to set the intention and actually schedule it in. And if I've learned anything in the last few years reading personal and business development books for the STC podcast or just my own life experiences, it's that your intention is kind of the key to everything. So if you've been working towards a goal in 2024 and you just haven't made the progress that you wanted, you're coming up on the end of the year and you're just really frustrated because you feel like you've been doing so much and yet it hasn't happened for you the way you want it to. You kind of have two paths forward in that situation, and both of them require looking at your schedule. You need to look at it and honestly tell yourself, did you give enough time to that goal for it to actually be achievable? Did you? Because if you didn't, that's okay. You still have an opportunity to shift that. But this is that moment to really be honest with yourself and say, is this something that I'm actually really that interested in working towards? Or did I make this goal out of some sort of obligation or feeling of I should want that thing? Because that's okay if that's true, but stop beating yourself up over not reaching a goal that you actually don't care about reaching. This is that moment for you to look at your schedule and honestly say to yourself, I'm not giving it that much space. I'm not giving it that much intention. And you know what? I think it's because I don't actually care about it. And if that's true, then let it go so that you can make room for something that you actually do care about working towards. And that's the other side of things. If you look at it and you realize, okay, there's not enough of this in my schedule, then this is your opportunity today. It doesn't even have to be January 1st, but this is your opportunity to then shift direction and say, okay, that does really matter to me. I'm going to make an intentional effort to build this into my schedule. I'm going to write it down so that there are no excuses. It becomes a non-negotiable. So which one are you right now? Are you the one who is recognizing that maybe that goal isn't as important to you as you thought it was? Or are you the one who is going to make the intention to give that goal the time and space that it deserves?